Hey everybody, welcome back. I know it's been a couple weeks since I've put anything out. I'm a little bit behind. I apologize for that, but I promise it will be worth the wait because here we are again, ready to go, and I have something great to show you tonight. We're gonna hop right into it because I know you've been waiting. First things first, we've got a new optimizer, baby. So, a few key points here. Just to, transparency, full disclosure, etc. This is not an optimizer that I built, okay? I had been banging my head against the wall, trying to build in all these different options, but keep the code written in a way that would be easy to understand, that we could walk through step by step just like before, and it is just not a very time-efficient thing for me to do right now. So, I remembered, back when we first started this, I don't remember who commented, but somebody had mentioned a lineup optimizer that you could pip install and ask me my thoughts on it. And I said, well, that seems very easy. Just pip install, run it. The downsides, you have to learn how it's set up. The documentation may not be great. Two, and probably more importantly, is you're going to be beholden to whatever limitations they built in, or any biases that they've built in, or any bugs that they've built in. Because you aren't going to be under the hood building it, figuring it out yourself. It won't be as simple as just looking at the code, looking at my video, maybe leaving me a comment, shooting me an email if you just can't seem to figure it out. Because if something's going wrong with this, I'm not really going to be able to help you that much unless it's something that I've encountered. I have shared this with the folks over in the Patreon and the Discord server. They've been playing around with a little bit and they've found a couple bugs. Most notably, trying to lock in a player with an injury designation, even if it's a game time decision, seems to break things, at least with FanDuel. We haven't tried with DRAFTKINGS yet. And also, if you lock in a player, because that's an option to lock in a player to be on all of the lineups it spits out, there is a strange occurrence where the second lineup it spits out will not have the player, but all the others will, and it'll give you one lineup more than you ask for. So I'm not really sure. I haven't had time to dive into those, but thank you, Jay, for finding them and bringing them to my attention so I can hopefully get it sorted out and figure out if it's something we can change or not. But just so you guys are aware, if you would like to, check it out. I'll drop a link in the description below, so you can just hit the link and come right here. This is the documentation for it. It's PyDFS Lineup Optimizer, created by a wonderful fella in Belarus, Dima Kudosh. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Not created by me. Again, full disclosure, it is just something I'm using, just like we use pandas, just like we use sklearn, just like we use numpy, just like we use all those. It is a module that you import. So, as a quick heads up, we have all of these game mode sites that are supported here currently as it stands, with no extra work on your end to make it work. You don't have to go in and change the positions. You don't have to go in and change any lineup rules. Those are all built in. DraftKings, everything but League of Legends. FanDuel, no soccer, no CFL, no tennis, no CSGO, but they have League of Legends. So, and as you can see, the lesser known types of places are going to have less and less. But the two big ones, DraftKings, FanDuel, between the two of them, you can play all the sports, which is great. It's beautiful. Most notably, DraftKings, hello, utility player. Yeah, you can do that. Don't have to wait for me to figure out how to build it myself. We can use theirs. So, getting that information out of the way, they do have some documentation on installation, usage. We're going to be going through a couple of the basic things they do here. I've gone through most of their documentation. It's not bad. It's definitely better than remember the pulp documentation. There really is none. They walk you through like one example and say that's it. No further explanation as to how things work or may not work or why. This is better than that. They're going to walk you through multiple examples of how to use some of the more advanced usage things instead of just telling you it's an option and giving you the command. They're actually going to walk you through and kind of show you how to run it, which is nice. It does leave a little bit to be desired though, so we're going to hop off of the documentation and I'm going to walk through it myself, kind of explaining as I go, and hopefully it sinks in for you and it's easy to understand, because that's the goal here. I don't want to just throw this at you and say, okay, there you go, it works, and then have nobody really understand how to use it and be trying to go through the documentation. Like, let me do that for you, and then I'll present it to you in a little bit easier to use manner. First things first. First time ever using it, you need to pip install pydfs-lineup-optimizer, okay? I'm going to run it. It's going to say that the requirements have already been satisfied. Requirement already satisfied yet, because I've already done it. I've already used it. Note, you may need to restart the kernel to use updated packages. So if this is the first time you're installing it, you might need to come up to kernel, restart, clear output, restart, and run all. We're going to go ahead and restart clear output to get that message out of the way. So we've got the optimizer package installed. So this is how we're going to use it. We're going to from pydfs lineup optimizer, and do note, when you import it, it's dashes. When you're calling it, it's underscores. A little thing, easy to miss. The number of times I did that wrong and got very frustrated is too many times. Okay, so if you do it, you're not the only one. I made that mistake already multiple times. So we're going to import a couple things: get optimizer, site, and sport. Okay, so if you remember, when we're using sklearn for machine learning, we would pip install the whole sklearn package, and then within that package there's kind of like sub packages that are more specialized, and we don't want to import everything at once because that's just going to take up memory and it can slow things down, and there's just no need. You know, one of the good things that you can do to have cleaner code and have things run nicer is only import what you need. If you only need one function out of a whole package, only import that one function. Don't import the whole package. It's a waste of resources. So we need to import get optimizer, site, and sport. And that's pretty much the bare minimum. There's some other things we can import we'll get to in later videos that are going to give us a little more advanced functionality. But for right now, we just need these three. So we're going to run it. Now we're going to define an optimizer function, which is as simple as declaring your optimizer variable name. You can make this whatever you want, okay? This is what you're assigning the optimizer stuff to call later on in your code. So if you want to use just the letter A, you can use the letter A. If you want to do best optimizer of all time right here, you know it, you can. You're just going to have to type that in every single time that you need to call the optimizer function. And I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to do optimizer. And then we're using the get optimizer function. Now we need to specify the site we're using and the sport we're playing, so it can import the correct rules, positional requirements, salary caps. All of that stuff is stored within the code base. So we just need to tell it where to look for the right rules. And since FanDuel basketball is what we've been doing this whole time, we're going to start with that so you can see. So we ran it. It's good. Let's take a look at our optimizer. That doesn't do us much good. So what that is basically a lineup optimizer object, okay? And you may have seen this if you tried to call a data frame using a funky way to do it without using a function correctly, and you just kind of call the object that it would run through. So that's just to, you know, that is literally just an optimizer function, an object, nothing more. It holds all of the rules, it holds all of that in it to feed once it starts optimizing the lineups. So the next thing we need to do is load our player sheet. Now, one of the limitations of this setup is you have to feed in the player list as you downloaded it from FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo, wherever. So I know in the optimizer that I built and shared with you guys, you could add anything you wanted to that CSV. It didn't even have to stay in the CSV. You could move it to Excel if you wanted, and because you're just importing it to pandas, to a data frame, it didn't really matter. You could define new variables based on new columns that you had and feed those right into your optimizer, no problem, right? If you're maxing, minning, whatever it is, you need a certain number of locks out of this slate of players, go for it. This does not have that. There's other things. It's a more professional optimizer. It does all of the standard things you would expect and want, but it doesn't give you that degree of freedom. And that is one of the downsides. So I just downloaded this tonight from FanDuel, February 26th. You probably can't see the date in the bottom right hand corner because my head's too big, but this is yesterday. Okay, you're going to see this video on Saturday, February 27th is when I'm releasing it. This is being recorded Friday evening, February 26th, and that is where I downloaded the players list from, which you can see right here. Okay, FanDuel NBA 2021-226, right? This is the player list we're loading in. Now, you can do some things before you load it in. When I say you have to load in it exactly, I don't mean you can't do anything. I just mean it has to be in this format with these columns in this order, okay? So one thing I did, I went ahead and deleted anybody that was already ruled out for the night. Deleted them off. Then I looked through here, and the first time I tried to upload it, let me show you what happened. So you can kind of see, and it would have been smart of me, oh my goodness, to do this from the beginning. Okay, so there were 3 players that instead of, FanDuel didn't put in a 0, they just left the fantasy points per game blank, okay? And that caused a problem that I'm about to show you. So if I run it with those blanks, I'm going to get an error that's going to say could not convert string to float. And now you might get that and say, what in the world? All I'm doing, I'm taking it exactly as FanDuel had it, and I'm putting it in the optimizer, right? Why is it not working? Nick told me it had to be exact. And you're right, it does. However, it's trying to convert this to a floating point number, okay? And doing type conversions, data type conversions, it can get a little finicky. So this could have been built into the code base better. It could have been. They could have said if it brings anything that can't convert, just make it a 0. They could have done that. But they didn't. And again, that's one of the things that you'll have to kind of figure out what the errors you're getting are and how to deal with them when you're using a pre-built system that you didn't build. And again, that's a downside. I love it. I use it. I've been using it. I like it. I've been trying to reverse engineer it to understand it better so I can build a less fully featured version and just kind of bring in some elements of it to my optimizer. So we may get to that point. We may have a video in the future that's kind of combining the two with that very open, transparent format that I've had before, because I would love to be able to share that and help you guys understand how to build something like that. But the issue here is it was reading this as an empty string, and it's unable to convert that to a number, because what it will do is it reads these in as strings. That was made apparent by that error. So what it'll do is it'll take a string and it'll look at it and say, is that a number? And if it says, yeah, that's a number, it just converts it to a number and reads it in that way. If it looks at it and says, is that a number? I really don't know. Then it just errors out and says, sorry, can't convert it. So if we had done that, changed them to 0s, okay, so we'll see that it works now. Right, now if we come back and we put an A at the beginning of one of them, it's probably, yep, it's going to error out again for us because it can't convert that string to a float because it sees an A. It's like, is it a number? Probably, but I can't definitively say it's a number because, again, this is a computer. It's not your brain. It's not a human brain. It can't look at that and say, oh, you know, based on the context of what it is, that's clearly a number that some dummy accidentally put an A in that cell. Like, it can't do that. It just says, well, there's a character there that is not a numerical character. I guess it's not a number. Let's keep going. So we change it back, we load them in, and we're good to go. Now, we have our player list in here, okay? Now we need to get our lineups. So we're just going to generate 10 real quick. It's very simple. Lineups, optimizer, dot, optimize, and again, this and this just need to match whatever you called your optimizer up here. If you call to something else, you'll just need to carry that through as you go. So, n equals 10, we want 10 lineups. That was fast. Lineups. Okay. Here we go again with this object thing. So what that gives us is a generator object for our lineups. And just like before, there's nothing wrong with that. We just need to know how to interact with that object to get our lineups out. So we can do for lineup in lineups. Let's say we want to print the lineup. So this is for every lineup in lineups, we want to print the lineup. That worked pretty easily. And most of the stuff, again, is in their documentation. So if you want to go through and step through it, by all means, go through and step through it. You will not offend me if you would like a little bit more direction than what I'm providing here. But I've already read through it, and there are some things that I didn't think were explained that in-depthly or very well. So that's why we're kind of going through the basics here, and we'll get into more advanced stuff later. So we take a look, no big deal. We got DeAnthony Melton, Mike Conley, Fred VanVleet, SGA, Gordon Hayward, OG, Jeremy Grant, PJ Washington, Rudy Gobert. That's a pretty good lineup. And again, this is just using their average fantasy points per game. If everyone had their most average night, this would be the best lineup you could get tonight, and they would score 305.05 points using all your salary. Coming down, Chris Paul, Mike Conley. Chris Paul, Mike Conley, SGA. We got some overlap here. We got some repeat offenders. Not the worst thing in the world if they all perform well, but typically you want a little bit more exposure than that. Let's see how else we can look at this information. So that was printing the lineup. So that gave us position, player, position, team, matchup, fantasy points per game, salary. And then it sums our fantasy points and sums our salary for us. Let's look if we just want to print lineup.players. What do we get? Rude. Okay. So I was going to get to this a little bit later, but it seems like we're getting to it now. When we called the optimizer and we got that object, we looped through it. Okay? It's done. We already pulled everything out of it. So if we want to get it again, we're going to have to rerun our lineups and get it again. Okay, now we're just going to get lists of each lineup. Looks like each one's going to be almost 2 lines. So that's just the players. If we want to do fantasy point projection, again, we try and run it, it's out. We have to rerun our optimize function. Then we just get the points. And if we just want to see salary, it's going to be the same deal. Try to run it, it's out. We got to reestablish our lineups variable. Now, there is a better way to do it, so you don't have to do that every time. Not that you'd need to. Realistically, all you have to do is print lineup, and you're getting all that information in one, right? You don't need to go through each of those. But if you print your lineups, and then you forgot something and it erased, or you'd restarted your kernel and you want them again, whatever. If you restarted your kernel, you're going to have to rerun everything. But let's say you just, like, I don't know, lost that, and you couldn't figure out how to get it back, and you tried to run it again. Or you accidentally ran it again, and now it's empty, and you lost your output. All you have to do is rerun your lineups function. And we'll get to a better way to do it in a minute. Because, if you recall, this works for DraftKings too. Yeah. So, we've done FanDuel. We've seen that it works. That's cool. So let's look at DraftKings. So I'm just establishing a DK optimizer, get optimizer, site is now DraftKings, sport is still basketball. Okay, because we're still doing basketball. We're just doing on DraftKings now. And same thing for DraftKings. I downloaded the player list for tonight for the main slate, the 7:30 Eastern slate. And we have average points per game and salary again. So, while you do have to feed in this sheet, if you do your own points projections or you want to feed in someone else's projections, you would just need to come swap this column out for those projections. And then watch out, because if any of them come up blank, it's going to give you an error. So if you have any, you just need to make them 0. You can delete off anybody with an injury designation. It doesn't look like DraftKings gives you that, but it would seem, yeah, like Anthony Davis is still here. Woo. DraftKings? I'm sorry. I've never really played DraftKings, which is why I'd never really considered needing a utility player before, as I've explained to everyone. But they don't tell you injury designations. Wow, that's wild. That sucks. Sorry to all you DraftKings players out there. You really got to watch that injury report then, huh? Which, not the FanDuel's any better. They listed SGA as available the other night, and he hadn't even come back from his injury yet. So, you know, it's all a mess right now if you ask me. But same deal. You can come in here, you can delete players out, you can change the numbers any way you want. It just needs to be in this format when it gets loaded back in, okay? So you can go back and you can check any of these lineups you see and see how well they perform based on, I mean, it's just based off their average fantasy points per game, so it probably won't be that well. But it'll just be, you know, Friday, Friday, February 26th, main slate. So we're going to DK Optimizer, load players from CSV, and as you can see, you know, that name is strictly just whatever we give it. It's just holding the optimizer function. There's no special secret to what it's called. I just call it something that makes sense to me. We did Optimizer because that was the only optimizer we had. Now we're doing a DraftKings Optimizer, so we're doing a DK Optimizer. It makes sense to me. So we're going to load our players from CSV. Going to throw in our file path there. And now we're going to do it a little bit differently. Pretend you didn't see that. We're going to come down here. And instead of running our lineups equals optimizer.optimize n equals 10 and then going looping through our lineups object, we are going to just do for lineup in dkoptimizer.optimize n equals 10. That way, every time we run this function, we're getting the 10 best lineups, okay? So we just rerun this one over and over again. That way we're never taking the lineups out and putting them in another function. We're just looking at them right here. So let's take a look at what we got on DraftKings. So it's a little bit different, you know, because their pricing is going to be different than FanDuel. And as you can see, point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center, guard, forward, utility player. Bingo bango. All you people who've been commenting on my lineup optimizer videos say, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? It's right here. Right here, guys. This is how you do it. Right here. You're welcome. I didn't build it, but I'm still giving it to you, so I'm going to take a little bit of credit for you guys. You're welcome. I hope you all win millions of dollars with this. I really do. There's not that many things that make me happier than having one of you guys comment and say, oh my god, I used your optimizer and I won $500,000 last night in the DraftKings GPP. I would say that is phenomenal. Here's my Venmo. Feel free to tip. But no, let's see what we got here. So if we look through here, we've got Bogdanovic, 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 and Bogdanovic, believe it or not. We've got Bogdanovic on 100% of our lineups, which if he goes off, that's fine. But if he has a kind of night, that's not so fine. So we need to implement some player exposure. That's all it takes. We have a new parameter on our optimize function. N equals 10, max exposure equals 0.3 or 30%. It's runner. Let's see. Now Bogdanovic. Old Bogdan, he's a sneaky one. He should only be on 3 lineups. Okay, let's see what we got for him. We've got Bogdanovic lineup 1. Okay, he is cheap. Dang. Bogdanovic lineup 2. Bogdanovic lineup 3. That's it. That's all the Bogdanovic's we're allowed. No Bogdanovic, no Bogdanovic, no Bogdanovic, no Bogdanovic, no Bogdanovic, no Bogdanovic, no Bogdanovic. All right. That's great. That's beautiful. I love that. Now, one thing to note with player exposure, or with max exposure, this is applying a 30% exposure across all players on all your lineups, okay? This is not player by player. This is a blanket exposure for everything. It is possible to put a player by player exposure in, and we'll go over that in a future video. That's a little bit more intensive than this. This is great for just, you have good projections you like, you just want to give yourself a little bit of variety, a little bit more exposure for your, 10, 50, 150, whatever pool you're looking to fill up. Give me my lineups, right? One thing to note, if you put in an exposure percentage that based on the number of lineups you are looking to output does not come out to a clear-cut whole lineup number. You say, what do you mean whole lineup number? I mean, if we take 35% of 10, that's 3.5 lineups. If you don't believe me, 10 times 0.35. 3.5 lineups, okay? We can't have a half a lineup here, folks. And what it's going to do is it's going to round to the ceiling. That means in that scenario, it's going to round to 4. If we did even 0.31, okay, and for those of you guys who still don't trust my math, that's 3.1 lineups. That's very close to 3. It's still going to round up to 4. Let me show you. We're going to run that, and I bet Bogdanovich is on 4 of these lineups, even though we set it to 31% exposure. Let's take a peek. We got Bogdanovich, Bogdanovich 2, Bogdanovich 3, Bogdanovich 4. Count with me. 4 Bogdanovich. No 5, no 6, no 7, no 8, no 9, no 10. So it will round up to the ceiling if that situation arises. So that's just to throw it out there. If you're doing a bigger, it's easy with 10, it's easy with 100, especially with 100, because, for every single percent you go up, you're getting a new lineup. Potentially new lineup with them. You'll notice every person isn't on 4 lineups, right? Just Bogdanovich, because the optimizer loves him at $3,000 at 20 points. That's good. That's over 6x value. That's not bad at all. So that's why he's a hot ticket there. He's just low priced. So we can do FanDuel, we can do DraftKings, we can put in player exposure. Okay, that's great. But let's say you want something a little bit different. Let's say you're a big esports fan and you peeped a moment ago the DraftKings does CSGO. And you're like, yeah, that's my game. That's what I need a lineup to optimize. I follow esports like crazy. I don't know anything about CSGO myself. They are doing Dota lineups. I could probably talk my way through that. But CSGO, I don't know anything about CSGO. But it doesn't matter, because I can go to DraftKings and I can, you guessed it, download a player list for CSGO right here. Okay. We got all these goofy esports boys' names. Degster, Shiro, Yekindar, Hobbit, all the fun stuff, and we can feed this in. Okay, we're gonna take it, and we got captains, we got flexes, we got salaries, we got points per game. That's what we need. Same deal. You can come through here, you can delete players out. If there's guys you don't like, even if they have good projections, just delete them. Take them off before you feed it in. If you're worried about it, you can feed it in as is, and there is a way that you can lock out a player from all of your lineups if you want. It's just a little bit more intensive, and I feel like most people probably have their own projections they're going to be putting in here anyways. So if you're already in this CSV file putting your projections in, you might as well just go ahead and take the players out you don't like and not even chance it. That's just my opinion. Obviously, feel free to have a different one. But we're going to do the same thing. We've got our file here, DK salary space, open parentheses, number 1, close parentheses. We're going to run that. CSGO opt is what I'm calling this optimizer. Get optimizer, site DraftKings, sport is CS is the abbreviation they use for CSGO on the back end. CSGO opt, load players from CSV, DK salaries 1, just like we just saw. 4 lineup in CSGO.optimize, n equals 25, max exposure equals 0.3. Print lineup, baby. We got it. Degster, Shiro, Axel, Elie, Naf, Grim. Look at them guys. I don't know anything about CSGO. You let me know. If these are good lineups, good job us, right? I know nothing about CSGO. I don't even know these players, okay? Don't know. You want to talk about Miracle? You want to talk about No Tail? I'll talk Dota. I don't know anything about CSGO. So, yeah, that's what we got for tonight. That's the basics. That's how you're going to get your lineups and see them. Next time we'll go over, but we'll go into how to export your lineups out to a CSV, how to get it in the format that we like to upload straight to FanDuel. I'll have to look a little bit more into DraftKings because I'm not familiar with the format there. I'd imagine it'll be a pretty similar process to FanDuel though. We'll go over how to set player exposures, how to lock players in. If you only want, say, 10 lineups, but you want, I don't know, LeBron, AD, Jimmy Butler, somebody that you've identified as being like the key player in your lineups, a core play, and you want them in all 10 of these lineups, that's fine. We can do team stacking. We can do game. One thing that I haven't been able to find in the documentation or poking through the code base is how to do a game stack. I can do team stacks, and it will look, if you read through it, it will read like you can do a game stack by specifying 2 teams in a list and saying I want 4, but it's going to just pick one of those 2 teams for every lineup and do 4 or 3 or whatever you specify from one of the teams. It's not going to do from the combined game, but that's fine. It's not a big deal. We'll figure something out to get through there. So we'll do team stacks, we'll do player exposures, we'll do locking players, we'll do removing players, we'll do exporting. That's the bulk of it here. I've been poking around in the code base to try and figure out some of the issues that were noted in the Patreon, which big shout out to the guys in the Patreon. You'll see their names sliding up and down the screen if you haven't already. Big thank you to them. They definitely help keep the wheels turning around here, both intellectually, talking about stuff in the Discord, whether it's just in general FanDuel Daily Fantasy, or if it's specifically code discussion, or just shooting the breeze. Shout out to them. If you guys are interested in joining and hanging out in the Discord with everyone and getting a little bit more access and benefits, Patreon link down below. Feel free to stop by, say hello, join up. Do be warned, since it is the end of the month in February, if you join before the 1st of March, you will get charged again at the 1st of March, because it'll charge you now for February and then again for March. If you do and it's a big deal, shoot me a message and I'll figure out how to get it refunded to you for February, because you don't need to pay for a whole month for 2 days, 1 day, whatever it ends up being. So this video is coming out Saturday, February 27th. I will be putting out the next video in the machine learning series on Monday or Tuesday, okay? I know I got a little bit behind schedule with things. We're going to try and do a 2 upload a week schedule. We're going to do Monday or Tuesday for our machine learning projection building, and then we're going to use Saturdays for our lineup optimizer endeavors, investigations, explorations, whatever you want to call it. We go into the more nitty gritty here, how to set things up to loop through different scenarios that you've identified and spit out X number of lineups for each one. All sorts of things like that we got planned. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.